my friends, welcome back to the channel. Today is a very exciting video because I'm going to be giving you my first impressions on this Archer & Olive A5 dot grid journal. Now that the halfway point of 2019 is here, my journal is getting super full, and that means it's time to move into a new notebook. Yay! Cue fireworks, so exciting, yes. Recently I have been using a Leuchtturm 1917 notebook, which is super fun, but the ghosting on the Leuchtturm was getting me down. I don't know what to say. You know, at first I thought it was fine, but after 6 months of just like regular pen showing through the page, I had enough and I decided it was time to move on and upgrade. So because I'm going to be moving into this journal for the rest of 2019, I thought it would be fun to give you guys a little walkthrough of this journal, go really in depth into all those details that I know you want to see and I know I wanted to see when I was researching if this journal was right for me, and kind of give you my thoughts on the journal itself. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Make sure to give it a like and subscribe, and let's jump into where you can actually find this notebook. This notebook is by the brand Archer & Olive, which is a women-made company that makes really good quality thick page notebooks. The notebook that I got is A5 size, so it's the same size as a regular Leuchtturm 1917 notebook, although you can get the B5 and the B6 size, which is a bit bigger and a bit smaller than this notebook. The notebook I got was the A5 Moon Phases dot grid notebook with the silver gilded edges, which you can see right here. And this notebook retailed for $35 US, and I paid $7 US for shipping. So when I convert that to Canadian dollars, since I do live in Canada, it cost about 56 Canadian dollars. I was lucky enough not to have duty charged on my notebook when it got mailed to me, but if you are Canadian, just be aware that that is a risk because this is coming from the US. The notebook is a standard A5 size. It has a 5.75 width and 8.25 inch height. When I measured the thickness of the notebook right here, it was about 1 inch, although I noticed that because the pages are so thick, it's going to expand a bit as you use it, so it might get a bit thicker. I would say this notebook is definitely on the thicker side, so just something to be aware of. It's probably about a third more thick than the Leuchtturm, but that's because you have really thick pages that are being sewn into this notebook. So the main claims that Archer & Olive are known for with their notebooks is that they have super thick 160 GSM pages, which means there's going to be no bleeding or ghosting in their notebooks. Another claim that I want to talk about in this video is that when you get the notebook, they state that the notebook comes with everything you need to get started with journaling and bullet journaling and getting creative and all that really good stuff. So I'm also going to be looking at if the notebook has all the features that you would need to sit down and start journaling. So going into the exterior of the journal, according to the website, it does claim that this notebook is vegan. So the cover is a linen material, which due to the fabric is going to collect a little bit of dirt and dust, although with a dry cloth it does wipe clean. When you're wiping it off with a dry cloth, I would avoid the foiling on the front since it is going to be a bit more delicate and you don't want to scratch it off. The linen on the cover is glued to the front and the back part of the cover and also extends inside of the notebook. The linen, however, is not glued directly to the spine pages of the notebook, and this is to help the notebook lay flat when you're opening it. I'm curious to see when I use this notebook, how the foiling is going to hold up and how durable it will be, so I'll definitely keep you guys updated on that. The notebook also comes with some additional features. It comes with a elastic closure, a elastic pen loop, 2 satin bookmarks, and a back pocket. The elastic closure is pretty tight, and this is to keep the notebook actually closed because it does tend to want to expand outwards. So you do get some slight indentations where the elastic is attached to the notebook at the front. However, if you get a darker color like this black, you really can't see it at all. I was really curious to see what type of pens the elastic pen loop would be able to fit, because I found in the past pen loops tend to fit pretty small pens and they don't tend to hold really big pens, which I have a Kaweco Sport. This is my go-to everyday pen, and she's pretty thick, especially when we're talking about this part of the pen. However, I did find that when I went to slip this pen in, it easily accommodated my Kaweco, which is really big news. I've never really had that happen before, which is really nice. I'm gonna also try a bigger pen. This is the Sharpie brush pen. It's a bit thicker, and although I wouldn't put this pen in the pen holder, this is just more to see what it fits. So it fits that, no problem. Let's go even bigger. This is the Pitt Artist's Big Brush Pen. This is like really thick. I don't know if this will even fit. Okay, so this pen won't fit. As you can see though, it's huge. Like, this is a really big pen. So anything smaller than this will fit in the pen loop. Okay, so now let's go into the inside of the notebook. When you open the notebook, you have a "This belongs to" page. This is pretty standard, where you can write your name. It also has the name of the brand, Archer and Olive, and the website, which is pretty cool. It then goes directly into the leaf page, and then you have the dockered page. There is no index or page numbering in this notebook, which is something to keep in mind. However, you can definitely go in and add your own numbers pretty easily. The pages are a very bright white. These are pretty true white. I would say they lean a little bit on the gray side, but overall definitely very, very white. I'm gonna put a quick comparison of how the Leuchtturm pages, which are very, very cream, look compared to this. The dots are about 0.5 centimeters apart. That's what the website says. And I would say they're about a medium to light darkness. They're definitely not the lightest dots I've seen. I'd say they're a bit darker than the Leuchtturm, but they're not so dark that they're going to be obvious when you're drawing on the page. As I said before, the pages are 160 GSM, so they're going to be super thick. It's really hard to describe on camera without actually you holding the pages, but I would describe this as being really similar to a piece of almost thick cardstock. The journal comes with 160 pages. I'm gonna guess that this would last me about half a year. So you would probably need about 2 of these in order to last you a full year if you are a pretty heavy bullet journal user. The binding is a sewn binding. This is very similar to the binding they use actually at Muji, which I've had really great experiences with. The notebook does lay quite flat with training. When I say with training, what I mean by that is whenever you get a new notebook, you do want to go in and kind of do this. And essentially it helps get the spine, wake up the spine. It helps wake up the spine and get your notebook ready to be used. If you go into your notebook directly without kind of waking up the spine and getting it ready, it can cause your notebook to be more prone to breakage and just damage the spine a little bit more. I've never had an issue with any spines in my notebooks personally, but I do like to do this at the beginning of a notebook because it also helps it lay a lot more flat, as you can see. So, lay flat binding, this is how it looks from the side. Finally, what you guys have been waiting for is the pen test. When I did my pen test, I wanted to see what kind of pens would bleed through to see if there really was no bleeding or ghosting in this notebook, as well as a smudge test to see if a inky gel pen like the one I use would be able to hold up in this notebook without transferring over to other pages and smudging as I write with it. I tested the pens that I would normally use in my bullet journal, which is my go-to gel pen, the Kaweco Sport, a small brush pen, which is the Pentel Sign, and a large brush pen, which was the Tombow dual brush pen. I also threw in 2 pens at the end, which I thought would really test the limits of these pages and really be a challenge. The Faber Castell Pitt Big Brush Artist Pen and the Sharpie Brush Pen are both really inky calligraphy markers that you're gonna expect to see bleeding on the downstrokes of these, because you not only have a really thick inky marker, but you're also pressing down because you're doing calligraphy with it. And then finally, I did do the smudge test with my Kaweco pen, which is a 0.7 gel pen. I tested the smudging at 0 seconds of dry time, 5, 10, and 15 seconds of dry time. So overall, the results of the pen test are actually pretty impressive. I'm really happy with this. So when we look at the ghosting and bleeding in the notebook, you can see that the Sharpie brush pen did bleed through quite a bit, especially on this downstroke where I was pretty hard on the pen. And with the other pens, there was no bleeding. So does this notebook show no ghosting and no bleeding? No, it doesn't. But if you're using a Sharpie brush pen in your bullet journal, then I don't really know what kind of notebook you would want to use, because I've never really seen any notebook be completely bleed proof to a Sharpie, especially a Sharpie brush pen where you're laying down a lot more ink than like a regular Sharpie brush marker. You know, when I look at a pen test and what kind of pens are going to bleed through, I like to see what kind of pens bleed through that I would actually use. And the ones that I use, which are the Kaweco, the Pentel Sign, and the Dual Brush, all did really, really well in the pen test. So that's the kind of thing that matters most to me, not really how these two are going to perform. The smudge test was actually pretty great as well. I've had a lot of issues with my gel pen transferring in my old journal and smudging, so I was really happy to see that it only took 15 seconds of dry time for my pen to not smudge or transfer anywhere. Let's get into my final thoughts about the notebook. So going back to those two claims that Archer and Olive make, no ghosting and bleeding, and preparing you with everything you need to start bullet journaling, I would say that the first claim, no ghosting and bleeding, as we saw, there was some bleeding with a Sharpie brush pen. For the pens that I'm going to be using in this journal, there's definitely not going to be an issue with ghosting and bleeding or even smudging, which is pretty awesome. Going into if this journal has everything you need to start bullet journaling, the one thing I would maybe consider adding to this notebook to make it 100% perfect instead of 99.9% perfect would be page numbers. But I do understand that not everyone wants to use this notebook as a bullet journal, and maybe they want to do sketching, and also a lot of bullet journal users don't actually use an index most of the time. So I totally understand that, you know, if you're in the minority of people like me who like using an index, you're gonna have to write in your numbers. But besides that, I do think that this notebook has you pretty well equipped to start bullet journaling right away, as long as you have a pen on you. Not only are you getting amazing paper quality with this journal, as we've talked about, but another thing I want to touch on that isn't as obvious is you're also getting a really well-designed notebook. This notebook lays flat, which is honestly such a big deal, and I also really love the matte linen cover. I love the pen loop, and I really love that this notebook feels like something that's been really well crafted and really well constructed. So those are my thoughts on the Archer and Olive notebook. I do really like this notebook, and after testing it out and going through all the features, I'm really excited to break into it in August and start using it on the daily. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you have any questions about this notebook, I can try to answer them in the comments below. And I hope you all have a beautiful day. I will see you later.